I just remember Ryan saying, if this is the end of the road for you, I understand.
Damn.
What? That's what happened. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Please welcome Ryan back.
Hi.
Hi. We are doing our love story, engagement story, all of the things that brought us to where we are today. So thank you for watching. If you have not seen last week's video or the weeks before that, please watch them because you'll need it for all the context that we're going to share today. Ready?
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to say?
No, all my confessions are off my chest now.
Yeah, you're actually right. Mine are up today. We did have a couple Q&As, and we'll start with that one first. And that was, what was some of our romantic dates? And I feel like that's a good way to kind of segue into all the tea that I have to spill today.
You want me to go?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I immediately think of Christmas.
What was Christmas?
Oh, Ryan. Our first Christmas, we got each other the same present.
Oh, yeah. That wasn't like a date. That was like the present.
Yeah, but it was like a date. It was just you and me.
Yeah, that's true.
No one else was there. Like, isn't that a definition of a date?
I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, it's Christmas 2020. Again, we're not with our families because of COVID. And so it's just me and him. And there's a painter that I love in West Village. And he paints like all different places, landmarks of the West Village. And we had walked by him on one of our dates. I need to like share his handle because it's actually really cool. Kaz. Yeah, thank you. And I remember we had walked by it and we're like, oh, this is so cute. And we like looked at some of the paintings. And so I remember like making a mental note, I want to get basically our first date spot, which is Bar Pisolino. And he had a painting of that. And I was like, oh, I should get that for Ryan for Christmas because it was like affordable. It was like such a sentimental gift, but it was a good like, hey, we've been dating for 2 months kind of gift, if that makes sense.
3 months.
October, November, December. Yeah. 2 months. I guess, okay, whatever. It's all relative.
Almost 4.
3 months. So yeah, so I thought it was really sentimental. We have the painting somewhere. Where did it go?
It's in the office.
Do you want to go get it?
You want me to go get it right now?
Yeah. It's easier for you to get up than for me to get up.
I'm always closer, right?
Watch the bench.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, I thought it was a really cute idea. And so basically, Ryan had also thought it was a very cute idea. So I get him the painting and I write like a really nice, what I think thoughtful note on the back of the painting of like our relationship up until this point. And we exchanged gifts. It was just me and him that night. It was Christmas Eve, actually. And this is the painting. It's so cute.
It's very cute.
I think it's really cute. Like, it's really pretty. And we have one framed. So basically, we had gotten each other this, and you got me the same one.
Got the same one.
And I don't remember who opened whose first, but I remember.
I opened yours first.
And you were probably like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, and you wrote like a whole...
Yeah, I actually wrote
nice
something on the back.
On the back, describing our relationship and all the nice things and everything like that. And then I was like, oh shit. I got the same gift and I didn't write anything.
You didn't write a thoughtful note.
No. So she gave it back to me. You're like, you need to think about whether you might want to write a note on here.
I did say that.
Yeah, so this is the one that I gave her. And what's on the back?
You did write a thoughtful note.
There's a note on there now.
Yeah, it's a very thoughtful note, but yeah. I was like, no, I put effort into my gift. Like, you need to put a little more effort into yours. But we had FaceTimed with his family that night, which was like the first time I had like met your family virtually. And your mom was like asking us, oh, what did you exchange gifts or something? It came up. And I was like, we got each other the same present. And she was like, well, one day, you can put them next to each other maybe. And I was like, that is a bold thing to say, like on their first virtual FaceTime date.
Yeah.
But she said it, and here we are.
Now they hang out.
Now our paintings hang out together 3 years later. So I thought that was really cute. That was definitely actually one of the most romantic nights in my memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was also the night where I should say that was when for me, like things got super serious. That was like the next step of like, oh, I have to make the decision of what our life will look like and really thinking about ushers, because at this point it was, I've put it like out of sight, out of mind, in the sense of let me just get to know this person. Then I fell in love with this person, and now I have to make the decision of what my life looks like, I suppose, after that, because I had had a certain image of what I thought my life would look like, or what a life with a partner would look like, and that image changed, or had to start thinking about it differently in terms of what our life would look like together. And it's different with every person, but this was just something that I had obviously never considered or taken into consideration. And so I started going down a Google spiral of like ushers and like researching. Your parents had given me resources too, of people to talk to, which was so nice. But we met on the Hudson in January, where I was like, we have to talk about this. Like, I was so frantic, I think is the best word. I was like frantic. And another thing to note is that like we had been, like when we started dating, I was drinking. And I wouldn't say you thought like my drinking was necessarily out of control, would you? Like, how did you perceive it?
No, I think it was around that time though, that it wasn't in January, but I think it was around February, where I was like, I don't remember if I told it to you, but I was thinking about telling it to you. And I was thinking like, the only time we fight is when you're drinking. Every other time, it's not like we fought every time you were drinking. It was just like, that was the only time where it was like, oh, this just feels like, I don't know, it just wasn't joyful. It's not purely, it wasn't like every single time, but those were the only times it came up. Like when you were sober, or when we were, just had a drink or two, then it was like, everything was bliss.
And I would say majority of our dates were drinking. Yeah. Every date we drank, I would say, like in the beginning.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it wasn't necessarily extreme like blackout nights, I feel like.
No, I think it was like just classic like New York, sadly, but classic New York.
Normal.
Yeah, where you just have 2, 3, 4 drinks over the course of the night, and yeah.
But I secretly felt like I had a problem, so I would like kind of watch myself around you a little more, because I didn't want you to think I was crazy. Or like there were times that I would, like have my personality cocktail before our dates, and then we would continue to drink on the dates. So I felt like I knew I was always drinking more than you if we were going like 1-to-1 or going to the next place. Like I felt like I was keeping count of like, oh, am I having too much, and like thinking yes and still doing it anyway. Obviously, since I didn't know you, I was very good about like, I'm not gonna just like drink with a random person that I don't know and like, I don't know, say stupid shit. But then as it got more serious, and as I like was continuing to go through my own challenging addiction phases, the day we met on the Hudson, and I think it was really coming from the place where I didn't want to focus on myself, and it was easier to just make this the big thing in my life that was happening that I had to deal with. Like, oh, what do I do in my relationship, versus, hey Nina, like you need to fix yourself, you have a serious problem. And I was kind of still in denial about that-ish, like, oh, it's okay. And so it was easier to shift my attention to this happening in my life. And I remember we met and we were talking that day, and I was like very cold, actually, I remember. And you had fully explained to me what Ushers was. You specifically like stated, I don't know if you mind me saying this, like you said you have Ushers type 3B, and that was like, you explained more what that meant, and and it was gradual progressive vision loss and hearing. And you said, I understand if this is the end of the road for you, it has been for most girls. That like broke my heart for so many reasons, because it was just like suddenly like I couldn't understand, and I was doing it as well, how people would immediately view a disability as a deal breaker and not get to know the person behind that, and not get to know your incredible story, which you have. And for you to have to experience that, especially because, at this point we were in so deep, it just made me feel like, how could I be the person who's even considering this? How could I be the one like even thinking that this is a deal breaker, this is such an issue, or oh my gosh, my life is doomed. Like, you know, you think negatively at first until you really recognize that it's you that's having the barriers, not the person that you're with. And so that was a really big switch in thinking for me and moment. How did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I meant what I said, you know, whereas I think it can be a deal breaker for people, you know, and I feel like we talked about it before where, like, not to be cold about it, but it's like you do have a choice when you're a partner. In many ways, that's even harder than having the disability yourself. It's not like you have the disability yourself, but your life is impacted so greatly by it. And it's one thing to just have that happen to you. It's another thing to like choose to let it be a big part of your life too. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't want to underscore like anyone who's both dealing with the disability or dealing with a partner with a disability or someone that they're in a relationship with a disability. I think it's so that like it's not even remotely fair to even say like to feel an ounce of like feeling bad about it.
Yeah.
You know, like you are adjusting your life as a result of the disability, you know, and you're actively choosing, and that's very hard. And there's so many complicated emotions with that where you might feel like guilt for it, but it's like, I don't think I mean, that can be an emotion that comes up, but it's like, you shouldn't be criticized for that.
Yeah.
You know, or anyone shouldn't be criticized for that, especially when you have that choice. And I think there's amazing people, both with disabilities and amazing people that choose to be in relationships with people with disabilities. There's people who, you know, choose not to be, right? And like, those are hard, really, really hard decisions. You know, it doesn't make them a worse person. It's just, it's an impossible situation in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah. And I definitely felt all those feelings. I think ultimately when I kept thinking about it, it was, I'm either going to make this decision out of fear or out of love. And I think you can make any decision in life that way. Like, how am I going to choose to live my life? And am I going to think about all the negative things that I'm afraid of, or all of the wonderful things that could actually happen if you choose to lead your life with love and like think positively? And ultimately that was what I followed. Like I truly just followed my heart, and I was not ready to let go of this relationship, of seeing where this was going to blossom into, which has been so beautiful. And one of the best decisions of my life, truly, probably at the top, I would say, deciding to get sober.
Oh, okay.
Because like after we had that conversation, it was kind of like, oh, now I have to like actually share what's going on with me. And that was actually more scary because I started getting sober in March of 2021 that year. So January, March. And I didn't tell you. I just was kind of like, I'm going to quit drinking for a month. And yeah. I was just...
You had a show. I remember that.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and I don't want it to come across as like, it wasn't noticing or, you know, you hid this whole thing. It was like, I feel like we would have like 7 great dates and then one like, you know, you raised, like I was like, oh, something feels weird. And it always tended to be when you drank too much.
Yeah.
And then I think right around that time, March, was you started preparing for a show.
Yeah.
And so for me, it made sense, right? It was like, oh, this is part of her process to prepare and lock in and things like that.
Yeah,
but
that's actually true because I'd gotten my first off-Broadway play, and also random, but for those of you who don't know, I did my 1-year acting conservatory at Lee Strasberg. And so I was pursuing this and still am behind the scenes. And so that was like my first sort of like big off-Broadway play, which I was so excited about. And I remember thinking, if I drink, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like I could have seen myself like either just not giving my best, like all the things, right? Like I wanted a clear mental headspace. And like the full story again is on my YouTube channel under Sober Stories, but that was also kind of a moment of, oh, I really need to do this, otherwise my life is going down a very dark path. And so in making that decision, I kept it from you for a lot of reasons, but I think mostly out of shame, like, and fear of what you were gonna say. And finally it came to the point where I had to tell you, like, something was happening with my family where I was like so upset. I was so upset that all of this was happening. And I was, at this point, my family had known I was getting sober, but you didn't know. And I was fighting with my family, and I would come to your place crying about my family. And you were just like, I don't understand, like, why this is such a big deal. Or like, it wasn't like you were trying to diminish it. Like, you just didn't have any of the context of like what was really going on.
Yeah, pieces of the puzzle, but I didn't have the corners, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So. Like you were like missing like the big middle piece.
Yeah.
And finally I was like, I have to tell him. And I remember like writing in my journal, just being like, I have to tell Ryan and I'm terrified and I don't know what he's gonna say. And I never thought about the fact that this could be a deal breaker for you. Like, addiction is a very real thing. I've seen it happen in my family. I know what it does to families. And I didn't know if you had experienced any part of it in your life, as far as like knowing someone or like understanding what that meant to choose to be in a relationship with someone who's dealing with that and struggling with that. And that's like also a lot to carry, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what might happen in my future either.
Yeah.
Like, that's unpredictable. I mean, I hope it goes a certain way, but I think recognizing that, oh, like, we all have something that you can either see visibly or not see. And in sitting down with you, I remember I came to your house, we were in your room, we were sitting on your bed, and I told you that I wasn't drinking because I'm getting sober and I feel like I have a drinking problem, and I didn't want to tell you because I just felt a lot of shame around it, but I feel like it's come to the point in our relationship where I can't keep this from you anymore. And I understand this is a lot to hear, and I'd come in with like of course I came in with like a prepared spiel. It's me, like, I'm gonna come in with something. And I was like, and I didn't want to say the same words you used, in the sense of like, you were so kind of like, if this is a deal breaker for you, or if it's the end of the road for you, I understand. And so I had said something along the lines of, I know this is a lot, but I deserve to be loved for me.
It's very, very Nina version of.
Like, I know I have this problem, but like, take it or leave it. Was like the protective person in me coming out to say that, but like, that's what it was.
Yeah, for sure.
And you received it. Do you remember what you said?
No.
Ryan, do you remember anything?
I have a bad memory.
I know, I'm like, do you remember anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just need to be reminded.
Well, you said something very Ryan-esque.
I don't remember verbatim.
You had said, I do because I wrote this down. You had said, I feel like I'm being put in a position to make a choice in the first minute that I've heard you tell me this, and I haven't even had time to process it. I was like, damn it. Yeah, like, you're right. Like, I'm like, fine.
Yeah.
And then we had much longer conversations and talked about it, and
yeah,
I think I left pretty, like, within like 30 minutes of being there to like kind of let you process and everything, and we had come back together maybe in like the next day.
Yeah.
And we like talked about it more. And
yeah, I think it's a lot of the same things we've just talked about around you thinking about disability, but then it's also like, I do think addiction is something that varies for so many people, what that manifests as and what that looks like. And I think I really struggled with like, I mean, there were the basics of like, okay, do you care if I drink around you? Do you care if there's alcohol in the house? Like, what can I do to help you through this? But then there's also pieces of it that's like, what do you want me to do if I catch you drinking? Like, what am I supposed to do? And like, is that like betrayal? Is that like you breaking a promise to me or to yourself? Or like, what does that look like? And it's really tricky, right? It's not, it's almost the same concept, right? It's like, it's not to underscore how difficult it is to have the addiction in its own, but it's also for people who have partners that are going through it. It's like, there's a lot of difficulty there too. It doesn't take away, right? It's what they're experiencing as well. And so I think over those, it would have been 9 months or so by then, we established those communication lines to where it wasn't scary to ask those questions of you. But even then, they're really hard questions to ask. And then even when I ask those questions, you might not have answers to everything.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, you don't know, right? It's a really tricky thing to navigate, for sure.
I mean, I think we learned together because I had never been in a relationship while I was not drinking, which is kind of one of the reasons I was like grappling with this is like, oh, I feel like I'm changing so much. Like I would be reading Eckhart Tolle and being like, what is my purpose in life at like 2 a.m. with Ryan? He's like, I can't have this conversation right now. Like I was truly going through that journey that's why I fell off the face of the earth in a lot of ways. But so I think that we just like talk through it and navigate it together. Everyone's different. Everyone's process is different, in terms of how they feel around alcohol. I think that you and your partners, that's just something like you have to really be open about discussing and supporting. And one of my first journal entry was, I told Ryan, and of course he was amazing and supportive and understanding, and it's true. So I'm very grateful for being able to have that moment and the hard conversation. And I think that was really what set us up to make the decision to meet our families.
Yeah.
So next episode is meeting the parents. I'm excited to share this one because this was like it was fun to get to really know your family, because that's where you really get to know like where the person comes from. You hear about it so much, but like this is like the core of essence of how they were raised and how you also see you integrating with the entire family. Because I do think to some degree, marriage is like two families coming together. There's boundaries for sure, especially in like Indian families. Like I feel like much more protective about boundaries and how I want to integrate that. But
And you go through the gauntlet, two sisters.
Yeah, he did say, he was like, I have two sisters, so I come well trained. And I was like, it was more nerve-wracking to meet your sisters than it was your parents, actually, because like I feel like they're going to be much harder. It's like a different girl dynamic. So that is next week. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have questions, please leave us questions. We'll try and start off the next episode with a couple. And thanks for following our love story. I'm not supposed to say subscribe anymore.
I don't know. I don't know the algorithm.
Okay, well, should we take a stab? Please subscribe. We'll see what happens with this video versus the other. I don't know. Subscribe, do all the YouTube things. We'll see you next time. Good job.
Good job.
High five.